Welcome to LiveDaf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem. Welcome back to today's Daf Hayomi Maseches MEILAH Daf Yud Gimel. We begin on the very last line of Yud Beis Amud Beis. Says the Hilugim Mishnah. We have several categories, 3 in total, of materials which are kadosh, whether it's kadosh for the sake of mizbeach offering or bedek habayis, possessions belonging to the general building fund, and you have some things which are really unsuitable for either. In all 3 cases, MEILAH will apply. After all, it belongs to Hegdish, and it is MEILAH enabled. Says the Mishnah, Kol haroy lemizbeach, something which is fit for the mizbeach itself. You have an animal, you have mincha material, which was dedicated for the actual mizbeach, but not suitable for bedek habayis, such as these animals we spoke of, because as we learned back in Maseches Tumura, something which can be put on the mizbeach itself is not allowed to be diverted to bedek habayis. So that fits under the first category. Then you have the reverse, bedek habayis lo mizbeach, things which are fit for bedek habayis and not for the mizbeach. And the Mishnah will give us examples of either. Then you have number 3, lo mizbeach v'lo bedek habayis, unfit for either purpose. In all cases, since it belongs to Hegdish, MEILAH would apply. Ketzad, for example, Hegdish boir malamayim. So he designated the boir, the cistern, full of water. Now, what's that good for? Rashi explains that's good for bedek habayis. The water can be mixed into the cement, building material, but it's not good for mizbeach use. Why? Because nisuch hamayim, the water poured on the mizbeach, come Sukkot time, you can't use this type of water. Rashi says they would only use mimei hashiloyach, from the spring that flowed near the Beis Hamikdash, the shiloyach water, which is mayim chaim, natural spring water. Taisus adds they couldn't use this water to rinse the karbanos after shchita, to clean them, because they would only use from the amas hamayim, from the water flowing through the azara that was meant for this. You can't just. So this thing is not really good for anything to do with the mizbeach, but it is good for bedek habayis. Ash pois mileis zevel, garbage is full of trash, full of waste. Rashi says that's good for none, not for actual mizbeach, not for actual bedek habayis, but it has value and can be resold. Hence, it's kedusha. Shavich malayoin, a birdhouse full of pigeons. So here again we have the pigeons, which are good for the mizbeach, for hakrava, but the shavich itself, the birdhouse, is good for neither. Taisus explains because they wouldn't just dismantle the shavich and use the materials for building, because you're diminishing its value. You're losing value. So technically that item, that facility, had to be resold and it's money forwarded to bedek habayis. So that's another example of something unfit for either. Ilan mali peris, a tree full of fruit. So what's that good for? If we're talking about regular fruit, that fruit is not suitable for anything, not for bedek habayis, and not for the mizbeach. You're not meant to be makriv fruits on the mizbeach, unless it's olives or grapes. In that case, it's good for mizbeach. But the tree itself has to be resold, because Rashi points out you can't take the twigs and use it for the making of the fire on the mizbeach. It's too thin and it's not really properly, not the proper type of wood. Taisus adds that they wouldn't do it regardless, because you wouldn't cut off a tree and diminish its its value. The tree itself is worth more than its firewood values. So again, it's something which is unsuitable for either purpose. Directly, it has to be resold and the money has to be forwarded to the Hegdish. A field full of growth of grass, and so this again is unsuitable for mizbeach or bedek habayis. In all these cases, MEILAH would apply to the actual facility if it's misused, and the items and the content with him, because the fact is he donated both the facility with the content, so kedusha applies to both. Aval but. In Migdash bar, he was Magdash just the empty bar. Then it rained, and Smalamai filled with water. So the water came later. In that case, it will not belong to Hegdish. Taisus points out, because how is a person meant to acquire content that arrives onto his property? It's like you're taking possession. It's like you're a yad, an extension of your own ability to obtain, to acquire. And your chatzar is like your yad. It's an extension of the person. Right? Your property relates to you, identifies with you. It's like you, and it could acquire things. But Hegdish doesn't have that. Ein yad le-Hegdish. Hence, the materials that arrive later on do not belong to Hegdish. Another example, Ashba v'achakach Ismaili Zevel. He donated the Ashba, then filled with waste. Shevach, a birdhouse, v'achakach Ismaili Yed, filled with birds. Elon, the tree, and then, after being in Hegdish property, v'achakach Ismaili Paris. In all these cases, Soda v'achakach Ismaili Asavim. Moyalan, MEILAH still applies to the original facility, but not to its content, which came later. Vein Moyalan Masha B'Soichon. Rabbi Yossi takes issue. He says, I understand the water, yes, I agree, the waste, yeah, these are not things that relate to the actual. They're not developed from they're not an outgrowth of the facility. But if you have a tree that grew fruit, you have a field that grew grass, that's Gidulei Hegdish. It was developed from an Hegdish item. The MEILAH extends to that too. So the person gave away the field, the tree, MEILAH applies to the actual facility and its growth. Why? Since Shehein Gidulei Hegdish, these are Hegdish growths. Vladamuseres. You have a carbon animal, such as Masra Behema, and this female carbon has an offspring who's nursing. Lo Yunik Museres, the offspring cannot nurse from the mother animal because the chalav is asr. No, you can't use the chalav of Hegdish to feed this offspring, which is not Kaddish. V'acherim, and others misnadvim kain. They will get around this issue by initially stipulating that when and if the mother animal turns into the 10th, turns into Hegdish, it sans the milk. Milk is not included in the Hegdish. You can do that. Rashi explains, how could you do that? How could you make a condition? I mean, either you're Magdish or not. He says, because it's within your ability to withhold the entire Hegdish. You could arrange that this mother animal shouldn't be part of the Maser Behema until a later date when she stops. So you have that ability to apply it around. Others learn that actually, Taisus learns that Acherim Misnadim Kain actually was a generous gesture by others. So a generous donor would step forward and say, I'm going to sponsor the milking of the offspring. I'm going to get milk and allow you to avoid nursing from the mother. Vlada Mukdashin, another example, is an offspring of a regular carbon, not just a Maser Behema. Lo Yidek, when Mukdashin should not feed off Mukdashin, Vacherim Misnadvim Kain. Hapoyalam. Typically a worker can snack off the field while he's working, but not by Hegdish. Lo Yochlu Min Grogers Hegdish. You can't snack off the dried, Hegdish figs while they're working. V'chein Param, Mikashini Hegdish, likewise a cow threshing cannot partake in the beans of the Hegdish because it's off limits. There's MEILAH. Says the Gemara Katani, Lada Museres, Lo Yinak Mana Museres. We have a chiddush in the Mishnah that the offspring of a carbon animal, even though she's an offspring of that carbon, she can't nurse off the mother. Not really, how do we know that's true? Taisus points out, even though earlier we already discussed yesterday that you can't have the chalav of a carbon. So Breda Peretz, Farshim explained that here it would be perhaps a chiddush to say that even the vlad of it is an offspring of the carbon. Maybe it's different. How do we know that's so? Amar b'chada bar Ami Asya, we have Gzeir Shav Havara Mibchar. By B'char it says a lashon of Vavarta. By Meiser as well. Kasha Yavar, we connect. Just like by B'char, the MEILAH applies to the entire entity. You know why? Because there is no milk. B'char has to be a male. So clearly the MEILAH, the Kedusha, covers its entire entity. There's nothing that's left out of the Kedusha package. Same with the Maser Behema. So even if it's a female, it incorporates everything, including the milk. Ma b'char ma'alam boy, just like by b'char MEILAH applies to the entire Enter the chalav museris. Likewise, the chalav of the master baby animal. There's milah even on the chalav. What about chalav hamekudashin? Chalav of a regular hegdish animal? Now we have another Gzera Shava. It says by b'cher. We have a similar lashon by mukdashin. We connect to tell us that me'ilah applies to the entire thing, including its milk. And likewise, an animal threshing cannot snack off the food. My time and why? I mean, it's a Torah requirement. Well, you can't muzzle an animal while he's working. Yeah, but bedisha means that it's thresh. It's his thresh. It's yours. Private material. That you can't muzzle him from. It's hegdish material that he's working on. Hadash kal ilin, another halacha relating to this threshing activity. A person threshes kal ilin, some type of beans. Beside the hegdish on the property of hegdish, mal is committed to me'ilah because he used hegdish property for his threshing. Ask the Gemara about betalish bayina, but me'ilah, as we're going to learn later, is limited to things off the ground, items, possessions, movables, but not the just using land, earth. It's not considered me'ilah. And here, that's all he's doing. Amar Avina Shmamani, we learned that the afka, it's dust, ma'alila. Somehow it helps dry somehow it benefits, it aids in the process, and it gives you hana. So it's not just the actual hard, ground that he's using. He's also using the avak, which is detached, which has me'ilah. Return to my base. What do we have? A tree growing near a boundary, straddling the boundary between hegdish and your own property, and those roots are coming through. Who do the roots belong to? You can say, well, it's coming from a hegdish tree. It's kaddish. You can argue and say, no, it's part of my property. It relates to this piece of land right here. It's mine. Says the Mishnah, Shar she'ilan shal hegdyot, havay mishal hegdish. So if you have a hedya tree belonging to a private individual, whose roots are protruding into the hegdish property next door, there's no me'ilah because it's a privately owned tree. And the same in reverse. V'shal hegdish shaboy mishal hedyot. You have a hegdish tree whose roots are protruding into your property. Now you would think, in this case, you relate the roots to the tree, just like in the previous case. Here it's exactly the opposite. Although you shouldn't use these roots, midrabanan, and rings of me'ilah, but technically there's no me'ilah. Now, it seems like a contradiction. When the tree belongs to a hedyot, we say the roots are technically considered non-me'ilah items because they relate to the tree. And in the second case, where the tree belongs to hegdish, you say, no, the roots belong to its current location. We don't relate it back to the trees. Mefarshim asks us kash, and they say that the second case obviously is talking that the roots are far away from the tree, beyond 16 amma, which is the nutritional, drawing zone of the tree, as discussed back above a basra. So if it's past that point, the roots can just, identify with their current location, which is your property, and therefore there's no me'ilah. Mayan, what about a spring? Flowing out of the hegdish property. Now Rashi learns that it was flowing through, coming from the outside, through the hegdish field, and now it flows through all the way out. So the water, while in the hegdish field, even though it's within the hegdish property, there's no me'ilah. There's no hana, but there's no me'ilah. If it left so you're drawing water from the section past the hegdish field, it's perfectly fine. Always remember when we once were touring the inner chambers of the Kaisel Aravi, so the tunnels where they had discovered that the Kaisel continues on, and they took us there to show us the spot. It was a wondrous thing. It was right next to the opposite, the closest to the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the holiest place. And at a certain point in time, they noticed that there was water dripping out of the rocks. Some unusual phenomenon. And people were coming by the droves to see it. Some were like, the Shekhinah crying, and they didn't really have any natural explanation for it. There's no known springs in the area or just out of that spot. It was so people were taking the water, wiping their faces with it, and I remember hesitating. I went back to my Rosh Hashiva, Ritza Soloveitchik, and I mentioned to him that there was water flowing out of the Malkim HaMikdash. What about using it? Is there MEILAH? Is there an Isya? And he pulled out a Rambam. He went through this halacha, and he pointed to this Mishnah, to this halacha, that it leaves, once it's beyond the Hegdish proper, then you can use it. There's no issue of MEILAH. Hamayim shebekachal zohav. Now we have water sitting inside a golden pitcher. Rashi says it was that pitcher that they would use to fill water for nisuch hamayim on Sukkos. So they would draw it in the pitcher, and then they would pour it into an actual kli sharis, which has kedusha, but while still in the golden vessel, it's not yet kadosh. Lo nehenin v'lo me'elim. Nosnu mitzleiches. Once it was poured into the actual container, which is kli sharis, it gets upgraded moyalim by. Moyalim behem. There's MEILAH on that water. Arava. What about the aravos that they would pick and place around the mizbeach throughout the sukkos? That's not technically, carbon material. Lo nehenin v'lo me'elim. Rabbi Elazar b'tzadok omer, the elders wouldn't hesitate to take it. And hagno yaz kenish shenenim imenu. Bilulav, place it in their lulav. Rashi says, even before it was put around the mizbeach, even before it was used. So Rashi learns that the previous halacha in the Mishnah, which says there's no hana, there's no MEILAH, is even before it was placed around the mizbeach, but after it was placed around the mizbeach, there's no question you could even have hana from it, because it was nasas mitzvah. And he says that the zakenim, however, would use it even beforehand. They would place it in their lulav, I guess temporarily, just used it, and then they would put it around the mizbeach. So why is it not an issue? Farshim explained, because they were using it for a mitzvah's sake, to shake with their lulav. That's a mitzvah. Mitzvah is not considered hana. Mitzvah is lav lahonas nitna. It's not considered personal gain, personal benefit, and therefore there was no issue using it for that purpose. Amar Rish Lakish. The Mishnah spoke about the water meant to be poured on the mizbeach on sukkahs. So while in the kachal zohav, there's no MEILAH. Once placed in the kli sharis, there is MEILAH. Amar Rish Lakish, emi alam bekulan. Yeah, the reason why there's no MEILAH is because there was lots of water there, too much to be used, and if it doesn't have the exact precise volume, which is 3 lug, it's not yet fit for nisuch, and therefore there's no MEILAH. Let's say in that golden pitcher you have exactly 3 lug, which is the appropriate amount. There's MEILAH there as well. Ask the Gemara Raktani Sefer, but the Mishnah continues. Once placed in the tzleiches, my alam band, there's MEILAH. Assumingly there is exactly 3 lug there. Machlal Deresh, apparently in the phase 1 of the Mishnah was in that golden container. There's no MEILAH even if it has 3 lug, because we assume it's the same type of case. I feel Rish Lakish is looking now MEILAH. Ela itma yasefi itma, rather Rish Lakish. You're right. He related to the second part, phase 2. It was in the tzleiches, my alam behen, there is MEILAH. Rish Lakish, hold it. That's only when it has the appropriate amount. Because there is a shiur for nisuch hamayim. Unless it has that precise amount, it's not yet enabled for that purpose. Rabbi Yechon Amar, no, even if it has more than the 3 lug, there is MEILAH. According to him, there is no exact shiur for nisuch hamayim. Whatever amount it is, if it's in a kli sharis, it's mekadosh the entire water. So as the Gemara, remember the Kosavar Rish Lakish Yeshir L'mayim. Does that imply that Rish Lakish holds there is a precise amount for the Mayim of Nisuch? But now we have a Mishnah where he seems to challenge this premise. Amar Belazar. Belazar says, "Amanasech michag." If a person should take that water that was filled for the mizbeach, bechag on sukkahs, outside, bachut, pours it outside the Beis Hamikdash. Chayiv, he's chayiv like shchutei chutz. He's makar of something which is meant for the Beis Hamikdash. Where do we find a source for Nisuch hamayim in the Torah? Of Amar Rabbi Yechon, Mishum Menachem Yud Fa, Rabbi Elazar, who considers this to be a full liability of Hakrava B'chutz. That's because he found a source in the Torah. This is meant to be put on the Mizbeach. Rabbi Elazar B'shitas. He goes in line with Rabbi Kiva Amra, the Dorish Nischeihem. He expounds on the Nischeihem, the plural Nischeihem. Some change it to Nischeiho. It's pourings. This covers the water on Sukkos. Echad Nisuch hamayim, Echad Nisuch hayayin covers the wine, standard wine pourings, and The plural covers the water, so we have a source in the Torah. It's considered carbon material. Hence, done outside, there's a chiyuv kares. End quote. V'amar Rish Lakish responded to him. If that's the case, that you're sourcing it in the pasuk and comparing it to the wine, why wouldn't it have the same shiur as the wine, which is 3 lug? Just like wine is 3 lug, af shamayim shleisha lug, like the water should be exactly 3 lug. So why would it not have a shiur? Apparently he held that in fact it has no shiur. And that's the position that he seemed to have been promoting here. According to you, it needs to have a shiur. I don't hold it a shiur. And earlier we just established, according to Rish Lakish, there is a shiur. The answer is he himself didn't hold of a precise amount. He was just challenging the opinion of Menachem Yitfa, because it seems like he does not have this shiur requirement. He was just related to Menachem Yitfa's opinion. You're sourcing on the pasuk, and then likewise, it should be an exact shiur. And seemingly he held not so. But of course, Rish Lakish himself requires a precise amount. Okay, so we had one Mishnah followed by another. The first Mishnah we discussed MEILAH applying to all types of materials. Fit for Mizbeach, fit for the Gabayis, fit for none. We discussed materials that arrived into the Hegdish facility later on. There's no MEILAH. But if it's an outgrowth of the Hegdish facility, Rabbi Yossi says there is. We discussed keeping away from the chalav of a carbon, not allowing the worker or the animal to snack off the Hegdish materials during work time. Discuss the status of roots of a tree. Discuss the status of a spring flowing through the Hegdish, and the water meant for nisach hamayim. In the tzleicha shel zav, there's no MEILAH, but once placed in the kli sharas, there is MEILAH, and we had a machlekes regarding whether there's a shiur for the mayim of nisach hamayim. All the best to you, and atzlacha rabbah.